I do need a couple volunteers, people who would not be afraid to give us a handwritten note during this time, because we're going to do some real-time reframing, meaning that we're going to tackle some real questions from you. So do I have any volunteers? If anybody who's like, yeah, I got a question for you. Okay, you got one? I got one, Nat.
Thank you, Natalie.
I'll give you guys some pointers here in just a second. Anybody else brave, feeling brave? Up top? Talisha, could you run that up for me?
Well, and she'll take one too.
Okay. Right there. Right there. I got it.
It's going to be hard.
All right, Talisha's got one.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
3, 4. Anybody? Last chance?
Yeah, that's been huge.
Okay, very good. Well, if you haven't met me yet, my name is Chris White. We're here because 13 years ago I thought, hey, I really want to get business owners together and their teams and start talking to them about their local resources that are available to help them solve their problems that they're facing on an everyday. There are so many great conferences around this area. Provia does a fantastic annual conference. Kevin Billy does a great conference. The one thing that I always wanted to keep GAPCON was the ability for you to hear from people that the next day you could talk to them. The next day you could reach out and say, hey, something you said really resonated with where I am. And we want you to have that ability and understand that. Now, Brian has not given out his personal cell phone number yet, but maybe you can get to him through his team over at Provia. But everybody else you've heard from today, they're available to you. They're open for you to ask questions. There's a strong belief in this community that we lift each other up by helping each other. And the boat is risen when the tide rises. And that's our hope every year at GAPCON, is that we are lifting up all of the boats together. And then when you leave here, you have the resources you need to be able to do that. So today, we've got a panel of 4 coaches. I have one preloaded question that came preloaded to me for us to start with today. But as we get going here, I'm going to ask for your questions if you had a chance to write them down and want to hand them up here. Just give me one simple question about an obstacle, an issue you're facing. Please don't name names. So don't say, hey, my CEO, Joe, is the worst person I've ever met, and he can't lead worth anything. Don't say that. Give us something a little bit more general, but because in real time, these 4 are going to help us reframe those obstacles, those issues, into opportunities. Help show how, with a little bit of time, energy, and effort, we can flip the script on what's going on. So for our panel today, on your far left over here is Chad Kaufman, President and CEO of Kiddie Poo Club up in Worcester. Chad has been a fantastic part of helping me at GAPCON for years. He's on my board. Chad had an idea that he's going to share with you about here in just a minute about an obstacle that was the very foundation of his business success. So I'm going to have him. Of course, you met Jordan. Jordan did a fantastic job. Please give him a round of applause. That was amazing. That whole session was amazing, and he was a little nervous going up, I know, but he got over it pretty quick. On my left is Susie Lance. Susie has been with us here for a couple years, has shared with us. She's also shared with my teams a lot. She's with Giant, and she's an amazing business coach. Works a lot in the construction field, I think, helping with the construction guys. And on the very end, who doesn't know who this is? Anybody raise your hand? You don't know who this is? Okay. It goes without saying, this is Kevin West. He would give a whoop, but we've got to move on. So Kevin has been a fantastic part of GAPCON. He is a great friend and mentor and advisor to a number of people. Kevin travels all over the country, sharing from a deep well of wisdom and knowledge. So I'm excited to have all of those. So to get started, Chad, we're going to come to you for just a second. And you started Kiddie Poo Club not on originally what was an opportunity, but it was an obstacle to the industry. Could you tell the folks a little bit about what you faced when you first started Kiddie Poo Club and how that led you to innovate around that and solve those obstacles?
Yeah, sure. So we actually had 3 obstacles. When you'd asked me that question, I'm like, yeah, that's one. There was actually 3 major. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Kiddie Poo Club, we manufacture an all-in-one litter box that's disposable, and so it delivers to the consumer FedEx every single month. It's a subscription business. I like to say the 5-second elevator pitch is 1 cat, 1 box, 1 month, no odor, no mess, minimal maintenance. At the end of the month, you can close and dispose, or you can empty the contents and recycle the box. So when we had this idea of developing an all-in-one disposable litter box, which doesn't exist in the marketplace, there were 3 major obstacles, well, probably 4. The first was I didn't own a cat. I've never owned a cat. I actually don't even like cats. I'm highly allergic to cats. So that was the first obstacle. The second obstacle was, not knowing a lot about cats and litter. I did know that it was heavy. You needed to create a box that would last for a full month, but that was also inexpensive and the urine wouldn't penetrate and so on and so forth. And then the fourth one was it's expensive to ship. And so how could a startup company that hasn't shipped a single product get shipping prices that would be competitive with Amazon and Chewy and Walmart and all the big box competitors? And so those were the challenges. But going back to the one that you had asked me specifically to talk about regarding shipping, I like to, and I've started many companies before, and it always starts with a vision. And secondly, it moves in not just having a vision, but how do you sell that vision to somebody? So for us, it started with going to UPS and FedEx and trying to get their executives together to hear what our vision was and how we could transform the cat litter, the litter box industry. For you guys, I don't expect to know a lot about cat litter, but it's a $4.5 billion a year industry. It's the same size industry as disposable razors. So think of like Harry's and Schick and Gillette and all those companies. It's a big industry. And the approach that I decided to take with both companies was Amazon was growing very, very quick. E-commerce was growing, but these companies were investing very heavily at the time into Amazon. And that was a very low margin, almost unprofitable channel for them. And so the pitch that I made them was, this could be a massive company. We could be spending lots of money with you every month. This is the vision. This is the size and scope of the industry, and these are how many packages we think that we can start shipping with you. But we've got to have some of the best pricing out of the gate. We can't wait until we scale in order to get that pricing. And so the way we reframed it was not just, hey, we're here, we're a little e-commerce company, we're a little startup, but hey, what is the possibilities? This could be several $1 million per month worth of revenue for you, and also the vision of diversifying yourself from Amazon. You guys are going to do better as a company if you start investing in smaller e-commerce companies like us and get hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of those companies than one single big company like Amazon. Well, funny thing is, this was in 2018. Fast forward to just a couple years ago, Jeff Bezos came out at his annual shareholders conference, and he said, we see FedEx and UPS being competitors of us because they were getting into the delivery market. So you know what happened? As soon as he was done, Fred Smith, the founder and CEO of FedEx, made a call and said, we are dropping immediately all of our Amazon business, which was $2 billion worth of business at the time. He tore the contract up and erased all that business and FedEx at that time decided to start investing in smaller e-commerce companies like us. And so it was just basically reframing what it could be for
That's
FedEx
awesome.
and UPS.
That's awesome. So you tackled 3 major problems right off the foundation of even getting started and getting going. And so, okay, out of the gate, anybody that I gave a card to, do you have yours done yet? Make sure you're working on that. If you're not, give me your issue. I've got, Nat, you got yours? Okay. Okay, here's the question. And Jordan, I'm going to come to you first with this one since you just got done talking about sales. Here's your issue. This company's got a tremendous salesperson. Sets the marks every month. They're the highest, best salesperson. He's got the worst attitude. Intransigent. Doesn't want to change. Doesn't want to move along with ERP changes. Doesn't want to. His way of doing it is the only way it ever could happen. Really grates on the culture, really makes it hard on everybody else to get along with him. But man, is he making money for the business. How do you address that issue?
Okay, so Thank you for letting me go first. Susie had requested to go first, but I'll take it. Okay, so when you're looking at a problem like this, and this is not just common to sales, this happens in a lot of other areas. I think so much the employee, the culture, everything that's going on is a reflection of what's happening with the leader. So then I would start looking at, okay, do we have clarity and accountability? Are we crystal clear about what the expectations are? And then are we holding them accountable to that? So I would probably go back to, what are the values? What are they actually breaking? What's the things that are happening there? And start asking the leader questions about that and get some reflection back on, like, what has allowed this culture to happen? What's allowed this type of attitude to be happening there? And then how do we reframe that? Because I think that's the easiest thing to say there. So that's step back, take a look at what the culture is that created it.
Well, let me flip to Susie then.
Sure.
They're afraid to talk to this person.
They're
afraid because
They're
he's
afraid to talk to
generating all the revenue, and he's hard, and nobody can tell him anything almost.
Yeah.
And they're afraid. What do they do?
So the reframe is similar to what Jordan said. You got to look in the mirror. Leaders create the culture. So if that has been promoted and awarded and left unchecked, it's going to continue. And worse, the danger is that everybody is basically learning that that's the definition of success and protection in this company. So I would say you've put your eggs in too many eggs in that one basket. And obviously, there might be good reason you fear if that person is bringing in half the revenue in sales. You can't overnight fire them without a plan because that's going to be a disaster. So first, you have to think through how do we actually equip the other salespeople to make up for more of the revenue so it's not as drastic a departure if that particular salesperson refuses to change. And then I would ask the leader to fight for the highest good of that individual, because sometimes he may be or she may be blind to what it's like to be on the other side of them. And they have determined that their definition of success is achievement through numbers. You have to expand their own view of what success is, and the company needs to be able to back that. And so I'd say it really would require looking in the mirror, fighting for that person. If that individual is willing to change, then getting them the support they need to redefine.
What do you think, Kev?
I'm probably going to sit down with the individual and tell them their story's too small. And there's a way bigger story here, and let's spend some time talking to your 5-year self about who you are in 5 years. Because if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to get what you got. And what we have right here is a collision course somewhere along the way that at the end of the day, not everyone's going to win and not everybody's going to be happy. So what do we got to do about this? And so let's draw an aspiration line from where we are to where we want to be in 5 years. Let's paint the vision for what that is. And then let's put the things in place. Let's operationalize the language about the things that you need to be instead of do. Because you got the do down. If you're hammering it and you're knocking it out of the park, you're doing damage. Okay, that's great. But the B part's not coming along for the ride. And most people, their growth and success can go faster than your character can keep up. And so you might be less of a person than you are when you first started, even though you're winning. So let's just really lay the problem out in a significant way, and then let's get really honest with ourselves about what we really want here and where the wins are. And then to Jordan's point, I think if I'm going to executive ownership, and I'm kind of punching them in the face a little bit. So I'm going, could you get what you tolerate? So what story are you guys telling? Because obviously if this guy doesn't know where he's going, it's probably because you don't know where you're going. So let's just get clear about it, and let's figure out what we need to do.
Speaking of a good punch in the face, Chad, what do you think? Chad is on my board, and Chad has zero problem making sure that I get a good punch in the face every time we have a board meeting. So, Chad, what do you think about this situation?
So I think the problem seems obvious in this, if you look at it on the surface, right? He's a great performer on the sales side. He's terrible to work with, with employees, and that seems like the immediate problem. So my wife and I do marriage counseling, and so I'll take this a little bit different direction. And so I always like to say, if you have a spouse in here and you've had problems in your marriage or just an argument or whatever, which I would assume we all have, it's the old kind of cliche: are we fighting about this or are we fighting about that? Well, oftentimes when you're meeting with a couple, they'll say this is the problem. Well, actually, this isn't the problem. The problem's over here, but you haven't identified what the problem is. So I question if this person is doing phenomenal out in the field. You can't have a terrible attitude and not represent the company well and have success in selling your product or service, but yet this person is. So why is he or she miserable inside of the company? That's the problem. The problem isn't the sales or the bad attitude. The problem is, why is he one way here but a different way here? That's the problem that needs to be identified.
That's great. Before I jump on the next question here, did anybody else get a question for me? Yes? Okay. Well, I'm going to get this one. I'm going to throw this up so one of you just jump in. So the question is how do you address workplace culture shift when upper level management is unwilling to acknowledge / see that there is a problem? How do you address workplace culture shift when upper level management is unwilling to acknowledge / see that there is a problem?
I'll share a short
Go
answer
ahead.
is, personally, myself as a consultant, as executive coach, I don't. If a CEO or an owner brings me in and says, I need you to work with my people, do you got any leadership workshops? Well, sure. What do you need help with? How do you need to grow in this? If they have no growth goals personally, I just tell them I'm not the right person for you, because leaders create the culture. And if an executive, if a CEO is not willing to look at themselves in the mirror and say, in this new reality, I need to grow, and there's certain things I need to continue to develop, it will never take root. And what happens is, if I would come in, and I did this before, I learned from the error of my ways, if that middle management level who's going through leadership development, coaching, good workshops, they're starting to grow and they're starting to practice good leadership, they begin to actually have language to call out the hypocrisy. And it's really a messy situation for me, but it also does not fit the culture. So leadership starts at the top and it trickles down. So if that highest level of leadership is not profusely growing, if they haven't adopted a growth mindset, you really can't shift a culture.
So this sounds like the classic problem of the worker caring more than the boss.
Yes,
But there is a path.
there is
Let's
a path.
go
What
for
do you
it.
do?
There is a
for it.
way.
Yes.
So if I'm in a situation with an individual like that, I'm sitting there saying, hey, look, we're only going to worry about your piece of the pie. Because there's all these things that are outside your span of control. But you can control what you control. So if we're controlling the controllables, let's create an environment that's attractive to others, that wonders what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing based on the performance and the culture that you're setting within your span of control. Let's do all the damage we can there and win really big so that we can gain some level of influence to speak up and lead up in the organization. And so if we can encapsulate that, put a good framework together, a good framework is clarity, energy, courage, productivity, and influence. Whenever you have clarity, you will have energy. When you get the right energy on your team, it will take you to the level of courage. In other words, you'll take risks within your span of control. And then as you take those risks and you see results of that, your productivity gets better. Your priorities get set. You're way more dialed in, and eventually someone's going to tap you on the shoulder. You become a person of interest within the organization. Someone wants a piece of you. They want to know what you're doing. And so at that point, that's the leverage point. But I often tell people that takes time. There's a consistency and a level of self-confidence and development that you have to do within yourself to be able to lead through all that uncertainty. Because you don't know what's on the other side. You don't know what other people are thinking, and you shouldn't. But you just have to be confident in your own skin and lean into that.
You guys have any thoughts on that one?
I mean, I can build on that. I mean, the Bible teaches us that we're to rejoice when there's difficulty and there's trial. And so it does have to do with what your viewpoint is on the situation. Our tendency is to look through the window at the train wreck that's on the other side, and the truth is, it has a lot to do with the mirror that we're looking in, and are we looking back at how we're responding to that situation? Do we like the story that we're telling ourselves? Do we like the story that's going to be told? And this is an opportunity to understand, okay, what am I going to do about this? What can I change in this situation?
Go, Chad.
I guess I'd like to know too, does the organization have established or written now core values, or as I like to call them, core behaviors? Is that my feedback? Or?
Brad's tackling it. Go for it.
Sorry. Does the organization have core values or core behaviors? I like to call them core behaviors because we behave in a manner of which we value. And so if you're an employee and you're dealing with an owner or a CEO or whatever that isn't rightly representing the core values or the core behaviors, you're going to have limited success in influencing that person. But you can influence your peers, you can influence the teams that you work with, you can influence those that report to you, and model those core values and behaviors that your organization has established.
That's solid. Before I jump on to the next one, because this one is juicy and I'm loving it. Did anybody else have one more? I will have room for one more after this. Anybody else? Okay. All right, let's jump into this one. I think this one is probably, in a nutshell, a Holmes County struggle in business. Here is, and very well stated, everyone gets along, but problems go unaddressed because no one wants to hurt feelings. Real quick, show of hands, who has experienced something like this as an obstacle in your business here? Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. So everybody gets along, but problems go unaddressed because no one wants to hurt feelings. What's the opportunity there?
I can start here, and I'll just start with me, because I do like keeping the peace. But what I hate is feeling like the emperor who's, I don't know if you heard of the story of the emperor's new clothes, but basically he was convinced that invisible clothing was real, and he ended up being naked, and nobody told him. And it was really awkward. And I feel like that at times, and I know that me keeping the peace causes that, but I hate it so much that I push a lot of the people around me, like, you have to tell me the truth. Like, you got to be honest with me, because if you don't tell me, we're in trouble. So a lot of it starts right here, is just asking others, can you help me with this?
What do you guys think?
That's great. I think learning to speak the truth in love is a skill, and it's really important. Some of us know how to speak the truth, and that's a skill set. They just say it. Other people, the in love is more of their strength. You have to know which one you're good at, which one you're not, and really commit to being honest. First off with yourself, and own it. There are conversations we don't want to have. They're uncomfortable. You have to embrace, the awkwardness, the tension. But when you're a leader in particular, you have to step up and speak the truth. Because to our earlier scenario, that CEO who was afraid to tell the person, their most successful salesperson, that no one likes working with them, that's not kindness. That's really bad leadership. Because I've been in those situations, and when that individual, who often is blind to the broccoli in their teeth, when I have to be the wonderful messenger as their coach to say, well, your reputation is not so great, it's embarrassing. And most of them are committed to change, but we have to speak the truth in love. We have to learn to say the hard things. If that is difficult for you, you have to ask yourself, are you really being kind? It's like the emperor's, that embarrassment. And I've navigated, I have a whole product called a team reset, genuinely, because sometimes we haven't spoken the truth, and then there's people who are on the chopping block and they have no idea. And it's really, liability when we don't step up, when we don't learn to articulate clear expectations up front with predictable consequences.
Chad, Kev, what do you think?
I do a little something called Fight Club. And so I think teams need to learn how to have good fights. And a good fight, you can't make the best decisions if you don't have the information. So you have to have the best information. That means we're going to have to be ridiculously committed to the truth. And truth wins. And so we have to give everybody permission to speak truth. The way that I do that, I have a process where we talk through about like, hey, we have to be intimate with our issues. And so we put the team in a room and we sit down and we go, hey, what's right, what's wrong, what's missing, what's confused? But I just don't receive the answers from the people. They have to defend their answers. So if someone says, this is missing, why is it missing? Help me understand why it's missing. And typically, if you click down at least 2 or 3 times in the process of their defense, truth starts to leak out. And you begin to start seeing it in the room. You start seeing the uncomfortableness there. And then we get to the bottom line for each of those situations, and then we might go to a different construct where we look at what's building, what's booming, what's declining, what's tanking. And so then they have to defend those answers as well as we go through that assessment, because the more intimate you are with the issues, the more clarity you have around what the real things are that really behind the scenes that are causing those things. And when you get to root cause in that, then you can actually do something. You know, it's kind of like a lot of times we put programs in our companies and it's not relevant. It's like trying to have a diaper changing class and no one's pregnant. It's like, it's that whole, you know what I'm saying? If you our tire changing class and you don't have a car, it's like, it doesn't matter. But when we get really clear about what those things are, now we can have the right kinds of conversations. So I think what's often missing in organizations is that level of assessment. There's just not a continual practice of that, and it needs to be ingrained within the culture. And we talked about culture building. Assessment's a key part of that, because now you have the opportunity for people at lower parts of the organization to affect decisions in the upper part, just because the way that it came about. It wasn't like an intervention. It was a process of discovery. And that's huge. That's key.
Bring us home on this one, Chad. Or go ahead, Jordan.
Well, Kev, I was going to say, like, you know, having a Kevin in your organization helps. What happens sometimes is over time, those people start being quiet. And being able to go find the truth tellers, be able to find the ones that are going to speak up and like give them some platform, give them a chance to talk, because not everybody is just like, doesn't have anything to say. Some people are biting their tongue, giving them permission to speak. A lot of times they've learned, oh, this doesn't work well if I speak up, because then it's going to get ugly. So helping people to be able to speak that makes a difference.
What do you think, Chad?
Yeah, I think that this has become a cultural practice in this organization. Comfort breeds complacency. It does. And when you're comfortable with everything just being status quo, there's issues that everybody is aware of, but nobody has the courage to address them. The status quo is just to keep everything status quo. Comfort, everybody's happy, but the real issue is that there's a big white elephant in the room and nobody wants to address it. And so in our organization, we consistently talk, and I didn't coin this term, and maybe some of you have heard it before, but we call it carefrontation. And it's oftentimes used in the EOS world. And it is having those uncomfortable conversations, but doing it first from a place of mutual respect and care. And it's a part of changing the culture in the organization. You have to get to a place where every employee or team member knows that there's a mutual level of respect. And so when we have to have different conversations, I'm coming into the conversation, you knowing that I have respect for you, me knowing that you have respect for me, you know that I care what's in your best interest. So now we're going to have the conversation where we're going to address that elephant in the room and get to the bottom of it. We're not coming at it from an adversarial perspective, but we're coming from it of how do we solve the problem in front of us? And how can we do that in a way that's caring, but also confronting the issue and the challenge?
So I'm going to put a bow on this one from my perspective and contribute. One of my co-owners at the restaurant, Dr. McFadden, put it in a way that is become just a part of the way I think. Clarity is kindness. When you choose to be unclear, when you choose not to carefrontation, when you choose not to give them a platform or talk about these things, you're doing an unkindness, because there's a lack of clarity. There's a lack of understanding, and people are operating sometimes out of that misunderstanding. And so that simple clarity is kindness is just stuck for me.
There's I don't know how many of you in here know who Craig Rochelle is, but he has a podcast. It's one of the best leadership podcasts I think out there today. In his last episode, the podcast was just on this topic. So if you want, some really good words of wisdoms from a pretty smart leader, listen to the last podcast.
So this was a really tight look at how to reframe. And I'll tell you, all four of these people, now Chad doesn't operate a consulting business. He's always been a very good advisor to me. They are people who can help you rethink these things. Susie's already said, if you need her to check your teeth, she will. Kevin, you're going to help me wrap this up, though, with some reframing structures and different ways to look at reframing and maybe some self-analysis that they can take out of today. What are a couple tools that you use when you're reframing with your people across the country?
I think one of the tools that I use, it's a framework, and it starts out with purpose. And that's the first P. There are 6 Ps. And, purpose always is worth spending the time and energy to understand. I think Brian talked about that this morning in a very powerful way. And when you have your purpose set, it defines what your presence is. And purpose and presence is something we often don't think about. We don't think about how people receive us in light of, how we conduct ourselves in light of our purpose. And so when our purpose and our presence are set, then it takes us into 4 realms. First is our psychology, and I tend to look at it through something that Neil Anderson talks about, where he talks about acceptance, significance, and security. Where are you getting them from? And you need to get them in Christ. And so you begin to work through that part of your mindset within that internal framework of psychology, and then you go to physiology, and that's spending the time working on your health and what you're eating and how you're taking care of yourself and your sleep. And then from that part of it, you get into the productivity stage. And productivity is really more about hey, do I have the level of priorities in my life that are consistent with my purpose? Are the priorities set in such a way that I'm actually have the level of capacity? Priority always equals capacity. When you have your things set, you will have the time to do things you need to do most in light of your purpose. And then the last thing is persuasion, which is influence. And so I will have the ability to, bring my best self to any situation, believing that I can figure it out. And your confidence grows all the way around that. And it is just a powerful checkpoint. I often look at it for myself, where I sit down, hey, am I on purpose? Is my presence dialed in? Am I getting my acceptance, significance, and security from the right places right now? Am I taking care of myself? Am I eating right? Am I sleeping right? Are my priorities set? And hey, am I bringing positive influence to the people within my life, my family, my friends, the other key relationships I have? And to me, that's a framing of just, it keeps me on track and keeps things going. And I just think it's a powerful tool.
Thanks, dude. Thank you all 4 of you for being here, for sharing with us today. Yes, please go ahead and give them applause. We are going to take a 3-minute at most break. House lights will come up. Don't run out of here, because we're just going to sprint through to the end of the day here in just a second. So get your post-lunch stretch on here. Shake hands, get some people's names. If you want to talk to one of the 4 of these guys, grab them real quick. We're going to do just 3 minutes, and then we're going to switch gears and keep moving. So we'll be right back.